Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World with the Hall of Famer himself, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Slappy New Year.
I saw that line, and that tickled me. I kind of forgot about Slappy New Year. That's good stuff.
We got some really good, cool folks in our Twitter world that really come up with some really cool, creative stuff. I'd forgotten I'd said that, but when I saw the clip, I'm like, yep, that's a lot of fun. So it just fit. And I got a little chuckles around the house with that, Conrad. Slappy New Year.
Tremendous.
You can imagine what Cody thought about that. He's that, and he's singing a new song. We'll get into that later. But yeah, Slappy New Year. Conrad, we never talked about this. There's a lot of things we have talked about, a lot of things we haven't talked about. Are you a New Year's resolution guy?
I usually am. I don't have one yet this year. I'm actually taking the wife down to vacay for her birthday this week. So I'll have a few days off, and I imagine that we'll both set some time and make those. But do you have some you want to share with us now?
Well, you know what? No, but I'll say this. I'm not really a big resolution guy, but I'm a big planning guy. Sort of OCD, and I look, I'm a summer guy. You know me. I'm on the boat and the water and the hot air, and it's freezing outside right this window right here. But I think the first, I don't want to say all the way through January, but maybe the first week of January, outside of the hot summertime, maybe my favorite time of year, because it's kind of a reset. And look, it's really just another day, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And I've, Conrad, rewind for me 12 months ago. Yeah. And what I was thinking about 12 months ago, starting the year, and what I'm thinking about now.
Totally different. I mean, 180 degrees different.
And I don't want to start off all sappy, but man, I'm grateful for you because there's a lot of different moving parts, the podcasts,
some other stuff,
your family. Yeah. Don't start your silly shenanigans.
I'm not starting anything.
Yes, you are. You absolutely are. Well, baseball.
Listen, we're not working on anything. I mean, we're just out here telling stories, and we're doing it from the Blue Chew Studios. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. Serious business though, man. I appreciate you too. This is a mutual admiration society, and I got to admit, you sort of got me nervous. I'm on pins and needles. I'm scrolling Twitter last night, and I saw that you were teasing a big announcement today. And the thing we were working on, you know, I didn't think that big reveal was going to happen until like WrestleMania week or something, like we always do. So what's the big announcement for something with Fight? I think
it wasn't. Look, I'm very excited about it because, as you know, I have had a relationship with Fight before Wrestle Kingdom 9 in 2014. Fight was actually called Flips. It was really a general entertainment streaming service, transactional pay-per-view, among other things, SVOD and all that goes with it. But due to the success, and a lot of people don't really know the ins and outs of this story, but due to the success of Wrestle Kingdom 9 and Mike Weber, who was literally working for me, but, married the two, and now he is the CEO of Fight. And it all started way back when. And now, as you know, me and you did StarCast together, and they have grown by leaps and bounds, acquired by Triller, but they're still a subsidiary. And you know, Mike and Costa, the owner, they run the show. But as we got into this, and I say this, the podcast and me still working with Fight, you know, it just became really, really clear that not only am I a Fight fan and you're a Fight fan, and I know you watch often, that there's a lot more on there than that to me is like these bare knuckle things. And look, it may not be for everybody, but there is boxing, MMA, professional wrestling, independent, you know, our friend Booker down in Texas. I mean, NWA's on there. I don't want to turn this into a Fight promo, but come up with this hashtag, pick a fight. That's pick AFITE. But you know, we're going to be coming out, maybe not weekly, but certainly oftentimes during the month. And basically it's our fight. You can go to my world, all the socials, and you can click on that link and watch the pick a fight. We're going to get it out there. But the cool thing about there, and there's a bunch of ins and outs as far as the technology is great, but are you familiar with Fight Bucks?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
Yeah. And you always do probably a better explanation, but the Fight Bucks is basically like frequent flyer miles. You spend X amount of money, you get bucks put in your account. And so you'll come a point a lot of times that you buy 2 or 3 events, the next one is basically on the house. And I just think that kind of strategy and that kind of marketing, and with me and you having our good banner, and our listeners out there maybe want to be dive into deep to whether it's independent wrestling or a Jake Paul or whatever it may be, pick a fight. That's the promotion that kicked off. I feel so, the reason I was so excited, is it a big announcement? It depends. That's relative. Everything's relative. I'm not saying it's a over the moon, wink, wink. I'm going to get it in your game. It isn't one of those announcements that you're trying to fabricate. No, but it is a cool announcement. We kicked it off. All the socials went out with it. Head office of Fight in New York released it. And so, yeah, pick a fight it's basically a social media campaign, but we're going to uncover, and Conrad, I'm going to pick your brain from time to time and say, hey pal, what do you think pick a fight should be this week or you know, coming up this weekend? So lots of good programming on there. My partners at Fight, they've always been real good to us. And so I'm happy to be doing this joint promotion with them.
Hey man, I'm excited about it. Hashtag pick a fight. Go check us out at My World Pod. I've retweeted it. I'm sure Jeff has as well. But yeah, we love Fight and done a lot of business with Fight over the years, and look forward to a big 2022. And I think you might actually be like a low-key Fight superstar, right? I mean, I just assumed you were going to be talking about picking a fight with Effie. Boy, you were trending all over this past weekend, and everybody wants to know about this new game changer, Jeff Jarrett.
So I'm looking. So we started less than 5 minutes. You had to dive in, didn't you? Literally less than 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm used to you strutting around and talking your shit and dressing like a dick dancer. And now you're out here like Johnny Cash, just caving skulls. I'm just wanting to know, like, what's going on?
Conrad, you know what Cody's new favorite song is today?
What's that?
When the man comes around. He knows every word. He knows every word.
That's great, dude.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But, you know, I knew you were going to hit me with it. I didn't think it'd be 5 minutes in. But, you know, I don't really think the pod is the place to go in too deep to it. I'll just say this. There will come a time when I will look, there's no secret. I'm in the promotion game, and Brett and Game Changer Wrestling, they've been on my radar. Well, Matt Cardona thinks he put him on the map, and it's kind of the bone I want to pick, not with Cardona or just Cardona or Effie or even Brett and Game Changer and all that. But Conrad, you know, we've had these conversations that if you play an extension of your real personality, there's always some authenticity to it. And I enjoy it as a talent more. And I think the viewer and the fan, you know, going back to the Jerry Lawler, Andy Kaufman deal, you go, wait, was that real? Well, yeah, there was definitely some realism in it because Lawler didn't like Kaufman's viewpoint on the South and the fans and all that. But when it's time for me to speak about Game Changer, I will. But this, I guess you could call it self-entitlement. You know, Cardona tweets that he put him on the map and that the best year of his life. And I just want to go, Matt, the reality is you want to be applauded for actually putting on your big boy britches and going to work. And you're wrong. Game Changer was super successful long before you were around. But then, you know, I was at the show but I've heard this talk for quite some time about these death matches. And I'm thinking, folks, death matches were around long before Game Changer, and ECW had a thread in there. And then the ECW folks want to say, oh yeah, we created this hardcore. No, you didn't. It's I guess I like to say these guys get out over their skis a little too far, Conrad. I can't wait to get off my chest a few things. I'll be curious to hear your reaction. I'll be curious to hear your reaction because if he's something else, I'll just say that. Man, you talk about a entitled independent. I'm going to be nice. I mean, it's just bizarre. These guys that really think they are something. At the end of the day, folks, this business has been around long before they came along. It's going to be around long after they're gone. And I can probably say this with somewhat of authority. Good, bad, love me, hate me. I've been around 35 plus years and going. And so I think I have a few words and I've kind of got some proof in the pudding. I'll just kind of leave it at that, Conrad. It's going to be an interesting ride. It's going to be an interesting ride.
Get even more from the hottest new podcast going, My World with Jeff Jarrett, over at adfreeshows.com. Let me get granular here for a minute, folks. Not only can you get the entire My World episode library with 0 ads, new episodes come your way each week early, ad-free, and on video starting at just $9 a month. We've also got tons of exclusive My World bonus content waiting for you, plus unique interactive experiences with your old pal, Double J. You get to jump on and ask Jeff questions, and if you joined us in Chicago this year for Top Guy Weekend, you got to hang out the entire weekend. 100% the best value in all of wrestling. Strut on over to adfreeshows.com right now to sign up. Well, I know that people can see Game Changer Jeff on Fight, but do we know when Game Changer Jeff is going to show up again on Fight?
Oh, Conrad. Yes, we do. Chicago, 2 weeks. Well, you're going to get me wrong on dates, but not this Saturday, but next
10 days, we'll call it.
Yeah. Okay.
So 10 days from now, you're going to put a button on this and we'll maybe understand where this is all going, because a lot of people, I mean, I've been teasing you on the show here, like, even, I don't know, when we went to the Red Rooster breakfast, I jumped out of my car and jumped into yours. And when I opened the door, there you sat in the winter in shorts and t-shirt. And I said, damn, this is wrestler Jeff. This ain't the skinny ass Double J I saw in Chicago. This is wrestler Jeff.
Hey, give that a little context about Chicago.
And sometimes when I'm hearing you, like when we're on calls, I hear a bunch of weights banging around, and that's not been the case. So are you getting back in the ring?
Well, that's kind of, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say, so there's a definition of, I mean, I guess everything's relative. Boy, I'm stammering over my words. Get back in the ring as in have a match, or get back in the ring and beat people up with some guitars.
Oh, well, listen, whatever it is, I'm for it. And I'll be looking forward to watching you pick a fight. But today we're going to talk
Conrad,
about.
Let me just ask you on that thing. I know you saw the images, and I don't know if people have seen those images, but you know what kind of, and I don't want to get too over dramatic here, but obviously I had the black hat, and there's a lot of meaning behind all of this, but that show in Atlantic City is on the boardwalk. And if you were on the East Coast on New Year's Day, it had the foggiest, the eeriest feeling up there all day long. And then when the sun set, you never saw the sun all day. It was all fogs and rain and misting rain. But Saturday night, the rain kind of slowed up, but it was a lot of moisture, and obviously right there on the coast. But the LA-based music photographer that took some shots of me, Conrad, this is sort of story behind the story. He joked and he said, in Hollywood, you'd pay about $100,000 to get this look, because it had fog rolling in, it had dark lights, it had silhouettes. It was about as eerie of a setting. And I was sitting there, standing there, and they're super professional. And you wouldn't look at it because you think of Game Changer Wrestling. There's so much more than death matches. But as they were taking those photos, they were joking about it. And I'm thinking, this is kind of surreal. Here we are, and just the mood of everything. So those images, my world listeners, if you haven't seen them, just don't look at me. Look at the setting. Literally, that was all natural. No fog machines, no lights, no deflectors, none of that. It was real. It was Conrad. It was one of those situations. I'm like, wow, it was surreal. Anyhow, let's move on.
Well, we're here today to talk about, you talked about how you've been around for 35 years. Well, the NWA, boy, they've been around for 100 years, it feels like. And
at 1904, 5, something like that.
Crazy. So we're back talking about the NWA, but the NWA in 1997 and 98. It's really strange how this all came to be as a part of the World Wrestling Federation. When do you first hear about this idea of, hey, we're bringing the NWA back to the WWF?
Conrad, going through the research and reviewing it, and things like they usually do start popping back into my brain. We're get into Jesus, the Mike Tyson, the creative staff at the time, because it all starts there. Sort of Vince's lack of hands-on in this entire storyline, which is obviously an enormous red flag. I don't remember if it was Russo, Cornette, Bruce. I don't really remember when this was presented, but I am sure that it wasn't something 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. It was within the week. Hey, this is what we're doing. We'll get into the costume change and the Aztec Indian and all that. But this episode is, to me, I think it's gonna highlight a lot of things about this era from about October, November, December, up through maybe first quarter, the real transition, not just in the WWF, but in sort of in the industry. It's when the changing of the guard and the 83 weeks was over. Not exactly in this, but this type of storyline, the NWA, which was the opposite of the WWF, and they were entered in, and they were not at the time relevant at all. Pre-social media, as we know, it was the Monday Night Wars, and the NWA brand was completely unknown, so to speak, and a fish out of water. And I think this episode, in a lot of ways, Conrad, is going to highlight all of that.
Yeah, listen, it's an interesting concept, and it feels like this is something that Vince McMahon would have acquiesced to just to pacify Cornette. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. Lord knows I wasn't there. But
I got to comment on that when we get there.
Go ahead.
Now, we're all human, but Vince sitting in the driver's seat with his own money and acquiring the not to get into that, but acquiring the business from his father. And, at this point, we're 10, 12, 13 WrestleManias in. Vince may but at the end of the day, at some level, Vince, as a promoter, says, I believe in it. Let's give it a shot. It may not hit a grand slam, but if we get a good stand-up double, it's good for the product. Now, this thing didn't get a stand-up double, but I don't think Vince was giving in, I think he heard the pitches from around the room of Bruce and Cornette and Russo. I don't know the dynamic. Obviously, he wasn't in the room. Obviously, Pat Patterson being in there. But at some point, Vince gave this a green light, and I don't think he puts anything on Monday Night Raw to this day that he didn't say, bye. Now, in hindsight, you can say, oh, I just gave it a shot. No, going into it as a creative head, you want to put your best foot forward. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to try to screw up today.
Come on now. You mean to tell me you think Vince McMahon decided, with all the success that he had outside of WWE and then the success he had in NXT, I know what we need to do for Karrion Kross. Let's dress him up like a modern day Farouk. That's not that. No, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that Vince McMahon doesn't occasionally do shit just to, he's not, he didn't look at that and say, God damn, this is exactly what we want. Screw everything that was working. We got to do this.
Conrad, it's the first freaking episode of the year. And I love Kevin Kross. Don't create it.
I'm not shitting on Kevin Kross.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
No. You think Kevin Kross picked that outfit? He didn't pick that outfit. He didn't say, hey, let's change everything that's been working. He didn't do that.
I know, but he did.
You assumed, I think you had to assume, I'm putting words in your mouth. You had to assume when you heard, hey, Scarlett and Kross are going to the main roster. Well, just take what they're doing on NXT and put it on the main roster, right?
The entrance was
unbelievable.
It's WWE does a lot of right things, and creating that emotion before the first lockup is one of their trademarks. I agree. The entrance was fantastic.
And when you saw him come out there in that skirt and helmet, you had to be like, well, what the hell is this? Right.
Let's change the pace.
and they did it to Keith Lee. And my point is, I can't be convinced that he being Vince McMahon, doesn't occasionally acquiesce just to prove people wrong. And here's my thinking. I have been under the impression, I'm not saying this happened again, I wasn't there, that maybe Cornette was a little feisty with Russo and Russo's style of Crash TV that really became paramount in 1997, where we've got these over the top situations and circumstances. And I believe that Cornette still had faith in traditional, for lack of a better word, old school wrestling, tried and true, proven. Hey, people still want to see competitive matches with good looking baby faces and badass heels and all that type of stuff. And I too still think that works, but it feels like it may have gotten a little too loud and proud. And one of the Vinces, whether it's McMahon or Russo, was like, let's just show him, with the idea being, I'll give him enough rope to hang himself here. That's just an expression, but you know what I mean.
For sure.
That, hey, we'll trot that out there just so we can not have to hear about this anymore. But I've also heard people say, like back in the day, I heard people say that Luke Harper had been Arn Andersoned because Arn was pushing behind the scenes anytime there was a meeting. Hey, what about Luke? Hey, what about Harper? Because he was really impressed with his matches. And then when the big giant push that everybody kind of expected or hoped for never came along, people would say, oh, he got Arn Anderson. And we've heard the same thing about Paul Heyman. Bruce Pritchard, out of his own mouth on Something to Wrestle, has said that Paul would hammer somebody so hard that there was pushback. CM Punk was a victim of that. I want him to tap the Big Show out in 60 seconds with the Anaconda Vice. That's Bruce doing an impression of Paul Heyman pitching.
Yes.
The idea being that if somebody pushes too much, they're just like, all right, we're going to show you. And I feel like this NWA angle is that. I don't think that this thing had to be snake bit. I just think it was, well, we'll show you. Do you disagree with that?
No, the dynamic of the room. And that's where I was going with the whole, my takeaway when I closed my iPad last night after the research. I actually text Eric, like the creative room that was, now you have Vince and Bruce and Ed, and lead writers, and then junior writer, but you have a room full of writers. Bruce, cut his teeth in Houston. Cornette cut his teeth in Tennessee. Pat Patterson, God, all over the country, but all that. So those are, we'll use those three. And then Russo, worked at the video store and magazine writer and worked his way up. Really 4 strong personalities in a room. And at the end of the day, Vince was obviously running the show. And I can see all that dynamic, just what you laid out. Let's just show him. Let's just show him. I still am going to say that Vince didn't say, we'll show him and we'll go fail. Vince, and his rightly so, supreme confidence is, all right, I'm going to take this idea that may have some date on it, may have some baggage on it, but maybe if we do it, put a little touch here, maybe I can make chicken salad out of this chicken shit with that. So we're kind of saying the same thing, but I don't think Vince just says, hey, we're going to go do this to fail. Who does that to valuable TV time? Nobody, and that I'm aware of. But snake bit is an understatement, because this is a perfect example of the different philosophies of the room at the time. Again, I wasn't in the room, but what a mess. And it gets messier and messier and messier.
Well, when you first hear the idea, I guess we should add context, because as Eric says, context is king. You come back in October of 97, and by December 30th, the angle's kicking off. Whew. So you're here, 75 days or something. And all of a sudden, this is a real thing. Did you have confidence in this as the way to debut it? Were you excited about it? Or at that point, was it all about the money and the miles, and who cares about the creative?
Well, you got to, not that you forgot, but the Austin, my promo that pissed Austin off.
Yes.
And then trying to come back, I don't say come back for that, but get rolling with that. And they didn't want that, the look with the ponytail slick back, we'll call it the Aztec Indian look, that came from creative services. Vince approved. This is what he wanted. I'd never wrestled in a singlet in my life ever. That jacket was different. It was a completely different look, but that original promo that I thought we were taking off on, which was reality based and with a lot of attitude in it, that's the direction I thought we were going. And then right out of the gate, the outfit didn't match it. And then, in December of this year, I worked with Taker on pay-per-view. So from a creative, I'll call it rebuild, because I was coming off WCW, there were stutter starts along the way. But when the NWA thing was thrown in there, to give it really context is, again, no social media didn't exist. So my head was around the NWA of the 80s, but then that got changed to WCW. So I literally had no idea. Independent wrestling wasn't like it is today. And the NWA promoters that were around the country, Coraluzzo, Brody, and others, independent wrestling wasn't even really a thing then. So yes, there was this loose group of promoters, but I really had no point of reference of what the NWA actually was in 1997, 1998. So when they presented the idea, I didn't think it was prestigious, good or bad. I thought, okay, here's a storyline. Cornette's involved on the creative team, and he's involved in this story. And, okay, let's give it a shot. I'm up for it. I've always been a talent in with the mindset, because I've been on both sides, is, okay, go run the play. Go run the play to the best of your ability. And that's sort of what I had with the mindset. I had no pessimism or optimism. Let's go do this. Give it a shot.
Now, for those who don't know, Dennis Coraluzzo is a Northeast promoter. Howard Brody is a promoter based out of Florida. They're really the last two prominent NWA promoters during this era. This is the era where Dan Severn is the NWA champion. You had no experience working with either one of those guys, right? You didn't know them from Adam's house cat, as we like to say.
I mean, I knew of them. Coraluzzo, yes, I knew of them, but I had never worked for them.
Here's what the creative is. This is a recap from December 30th, 1997. This is in the Observer as he's writing about what happened at the New Haven Coliseum. Quote, Cornette came out with Dennis Coraluzzo and Howard Brody as the president and vice president of the NWA, the oldest wrestling organization in the world, and mentioned it was the organization of great champions like Lou Thesz and Harley Race. They then had a match to crown the NWA North American champion, with Jarrett going against Barry Windham, not billed as Blackjack, but still with the black hair and mustache, and billed as a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The idea was they were going back to tradition. and the wrestling was blown because the match was terrible, with Jarrett mainly clowning around rather than wrestling. As Wyndham set up a superplex, Coraluzzo distracted the ref, and Cornette hit Wyndham with his tennis racket, and Jarrett was crowned champion. They did a presentation in the ring with Cornette, Brody, Coraluzzo, and Jarrett when Austin came out again. The first three got out of the ring, but Jarrett didn't see it coming and got the stunner. So we're going to crown a new champion, but oh, by the way, he ain't shit compared to Stone Cold. I mean, this is the first time we see it. The match is what it is. It's an overbooked finish. It's not this hard hitting, down and dirty, basic. Let's get back to the basics wrestling. Two very capable performers. Barry Windham here was still capable of a great match. No, it's not 1986 Barry, but he could have still put together a good match with you. I just know it. But it's a TV match, so they're only going to give it so much time. And just to make sure the audience knows this isn't something we should take seriously, let's have our top star come out and just shit all over it and mock it. I mean, that's what happened, right?
Bingo. I mean, right out of the gate, in the recap of all that, obviously hindsight's 2020, but dadgum. And here's the other, I think, well, this isn't, it's the obvious to me. The NWA brand in the context of the WWF is completely foreign. There was no WWE network there. So if you're a 2-year watcher or a 5-year watcher or a 7-year watcher or a 20-year watcher of that Northeast in New Haven, that wasn't NWA territory. So it was like such an insider deal that you really had to know from a history. I mean, and God rest his soul, Dennis and Howard, love them, but you know, who are these guys? And Jeff's coming back in, you know, 8-10 weeks, and he had wrestled Taker and on that pay-per-view. And so I was just getting, yeah, it was a mess. And as you said, oh yeah, music, glass break, stunner. Okay, there's the button on the segment. What? It's, you know, yeah. So,
I mean, if they would have brought out some other NWA promoters, there were some recognizable names, like, you know, even though they weren't technically a part of the NWA, you know, you could have brought out Bill Watts, or I don't think Jim Crockett was doing anything with WCW by 97. I could be wrong. I know David was still there, but the point is there were recognizable figures. You didn't have to run it in this part of the country. You could have done this angle in North Carolina, or you could have done it in the St. Louis. You could have done it in Atlanta.
Let me say this, the seed planting. To my knowledge, the week prior to this, or a couple of weeks prior to this, there was no mention of any of this. And I think that is something that is often lost, that where it's a weekly episodic, at least plant a few seeds. Hell, we dug a hole, planted the tree, filled it back, watered it, and then all of a sudden, here come a tornado and tore it down, all in one episode in an 8-minute match. So, I mean, Conrad, you flipped me. It was, it was. I'll show you.
It 100% is. Like, if you had any faith and confidence in it, you wouldn't run it in this town. You wouldn't have booked that type of match. You would have said, hey, you guys are going to go out there. You know, maybe it's okay. Match times don't really matter. But the point is, if it's an NWA title match, it can't just be a regular Raw TV match, you know, 4 minutes or 6 minutes with entrances or whatever. This needs to be 12 or 17 or something. You guys got to tell a story. You know, there's got to be more to it than that. And instead we're introducing, hey, this is a former tag guy who's been in kind of a whatever spot with the tag. And it's a mess. And don't get me wrong. I see as a performer, you're like, well, shit, if Cornette's going to be my manager, this actually might work out. But again, they're doing it in a weird spot. They're doing
Maybe we get Howard Brody to do an ad free.
Yeah, listen, I don't know how much more could be said about this, but I do want to ask what you remember of the match itself. You know, Meltzer recapped and said you weren't taking it seriously, and obviously, once upon a time, Barry Windham was known for his top rope superplex. and that sets up, the big racket crack. And here we go. You're the champ from, again, a belt that this audience has never heard of. They're not familiar with. It's not like
and it's not the belt in that brand.
Correct. If this was the actual NWA world title, you're like, oh, I remember that. And you could have certainly dusted off some former NWA champions who held that, or old promoters.
Jim Ross would have happily said Flair, Luthez, Briscoes, Funks, all former champions of this title. No,
Harley Race could have been there.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunity that was there, and it doesn't happen. Instead, we're going to bring these two independent promoters out there. They're going to go have a Gaga match. And then once it's all over with, we're going to have Stone Cold come out and just stun the shit out of everybody.
And I don't remember it being Gaga because, one of the things I can remember, and I met Barry in the late 80s, but obviously not being able to work. But when you're working with Barry, he's a big dude. He's a big, athletic man's man. And, I don't think Barry was into comedy, and as me as going for a title, that's Dave having a little fun with his fiction. But as far as clowning around, and maybe Cornette, maybe we did a comedy spot. I didn't go back and actually watch this match, but Barry was always, to me, a pleasure to work with, and he's a pro. All right, I'm going to turn it up. It's TV. It's a house show. I'm going to do this. And Barry had a lot of longevity in this business, and second generation. So there you have it.
You're saying it's not a lot of Gaga. The match goes 3 minutes and 35 seconds for a title belt.
Bingo.
I mean, and by the way,
went home.
That's common. Let me just recap what we're doing here on this show. Ken Shamrock beats Farouk in 5:03. Jarrett beats Wyndham in 3:35. DOA beats the Truth Commission in 3:39. Owen beats Savio. Mark Merrill beats Tom Brandy in 3:41. Flash Funk beats Goldust in 2:33. And the Outlaws beat the Headbangers in 4:59. So nobody's getting a long match, is my point.
Yep.
But we're bringing back the NWA in Connecticut with two promoters we've never heard of. I don't mean to be disrespectful. You know what I mean? This audience is not familiar with them. And there's a guy who has just recently come back and has apparently pissed off Stone Cold, and maybe we know that, maybe we don't if we read the newsletters. But then there's Barry Windham, who, as I said, has just been sort of languishing as a tag team act, one half of a tag team act. And we're going to debut a belt you've never heard of, and we're going to tell all that story in 3:35, and then we're going to have our real top star, because these guys aren't stars, and we're not going to treat them as such. And we're going to have him just shit all over the thing 3.5 minutes later. Yes, of course that they wanted to prove a point. I mean, that's always been the way I felt. I'm kind of surprised it took me selling you for you to come around to that.
Well, I still think Vince values his TV time and says,
oh, but my point is, this was not TV time for you. This was for Austin.
Oh yeah.
So he will sacrifice. Hey, here's the big dog's got to eat, is my point. And you were prey at that point.
Oh, 1,000%, not 100%, 1,000%.
But it's been positioned to Cornette as, okay, we'll give him what he wants. Well, he didn't mean for Austin to come shit on the shit in 3.5 minutes, right?
Probably not.
Yeah,
probably not.
I get what you're saying, but I think the same thing. Like, I know we did the whole Killer Cross thing earlier, or Karrion Cross thing earlier. He put that out there for Jeff Hardy to eat. It wasn't for Cross. And I know that people, sort of split hairs on what we're trying to say here. But Jeff Hardy can't go out there and wrestle himself. I mean, he probably could, but you know what I mean. He's got to have some.
He's got to have a team on
looking good dude to take down and beat up. He's got to beat somebody. So why not let it be this guy dressed like a gladiator?
But at the end of the day, because it wasn't a 1 week wonder here. I mean, at some point I can see in Vince's mind, or even the whole room's mind, look, we're going to come out of it. We're going to do this. But at some point, I'm going to get it over the way I want to get it over. You don't think Vince had that thought?
I'm not arguing that he felt like there could be value with this, but I mean, I'm not saying this to be an ass, but he also put the Truth Commission and the Barrique was on TV, because somebody's got to lose these matches. So yes, you're going to get TV time, but you're going to be counting the lights.
There you go. And not everybody can be main event.
Yes. But here's my thing though. Barry Windham has been here and we've been looking for something for him to do for a while. And we tried him, when he came back in 96 as the Stalker, we tried it. It didn't work. We put him in a tag team with Justin Hawk Bradshaw. They became the New Blackjacks. They looked badass. I love that tag team. Me, Conrad Thompson, think it's awesome. But I also know if you put the word new in front of anything, it's dead before it gets started. And now we don't have anything else for him to do. So, okay, let him get out there and challenge for the NWA title. But you're there fresh off WCW TV. And you had brush ups with some big stars already and proven yourself. You've been assistant manager 48 times at that point. Like, it feels like this is a waste of you, but you weren't even supposed to be in there with Barry Windham, according to Dave Meltzer. Dave would write, Doug Furnas was originally to be the Jeff Jarrett opponent in the NWA North American title match on the New Haven Raw. Apparently they either were trying to hide the angle or there was a mix up as the match didn't appear on the posted schedule. Furnas saw his name not on the show and apparently left, and they had to round up Barry Windham as a sub. Did you hear that before?
Never. I never, until last night when I read that, I'm like, what? And little story behind the story, Doug Furnas. My sister's father-in-law is from Oklahoma. Same town as Doug Furnas. They recruited him. So Doug went to University of Tennessee. So there's a whole story of Doug and University of Tennessee and all that. But he was in WWF just for a short time. I never heard. That's the first. Kudos to Dave if he got that scoop, if it's accurate, because I'm assuming back then, well, still to this day, he has great sources, but I'm assuming there's some validity to that. This is something that I don't believe is fiction. I believe Dave had that at some point. It's supposed to be Furnas, but he left. I don't know.
And by the way, here's why I believe the Furnas thing.
Okay.
Jim Cornette was super high on Doug Furnas. Smoky Mountain, Knoxville.
Okay.
Cornette was real high on Furnas, from my understanding, and we know JR is, but just because of his amateur status. And anyway, point being, it felt like to me, even reading this, I think people showed up to the building and they were like, oh shit, did we promise them we would do it today? Okay. Because this is such a last minute thing. Like, well, we're not going to give it a lot of time. I'll give it 3.5 minutes. It just feels like an afterthought, because as it reads here, Furnas saw his name not on the show and apparently left, meaning Doug Furnas, new to be at TV, gets there, sees they have nothing for him, and leave. Well, that means it wasn't written into the show. And by the way, maybe they were trying to hide the angle. They're trying to hide Dennis Coraluzzo. What? That's not a thing. Everybody else already worked. They're trying to hide. Did you hear Howard Brody's here? Nobody cares. This is 97. This isn't even a forbidden door. This is a forbidden trap door, and your ass fell through it, is what it is.
You know what? You having the rhythm and the cadence of doing Bruce's show and Eric's show and Tony and Arn and all this, you actually do have a much better vibe, because I'm sort of like time teleported back to this. Obviously, it wasn't a highlight of my career from that promo of returning to the following whatever year or so. But man, as you lay out that component of it, my delusional optimism was front and center.
Buddy, you're just showing up for work and happy to be here, and I love you for it. But I do. When did you know, all right, so I'm going to win the belt, and then Austin's going to stun me? You knew that ahead of time. It's not like you're in the ring and the glass breaks.
No. Yeah.
But when they tell that to you, because you're a delusional optimist, do you then start thinking, well, this must mean I'm going to work with Steve?
Look, he did it several times. I think this is one of the first times. And I was like, okay, two sides to look at this. He's going to stun me. And that takes care, because Vince, I believe, better than any promoter in history, my father ranks up there as, he kept Lawler. You just didn't mess with that aura. And Vince kept Hulk. As hot as Savage or Warrior became, they never, ever were positioned like Hulk was, ever, during Hulk's, main run. And Austin, from the 316 and took off. And once he got in that groove, he was stunning 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I mean, he was the guy. So to even think for a minute in my mind, oh, he shouldn't do that to me, I just won the title. That's silly. That's being a mark for the business, not understanding it. Then on the other side is, okay, he could have stunned anywhere. Is it the segment? Is my segment some magical spot to put it in? Yeah, okay. Episodically, it probably works. But he did stun me. And look, is it really going to hurt me to get stunned? No. In the grander scheme of things, just winning the title, it certainly didn't do a lot for this NWA storyline, for damn sure.
To me, as a conventional wrestling circumstance or situation, it does feel like, and I'm not saying this to be funny, but it feels like if he's stunning you, he wants to feud with you or he wants your title, but there's no follow-up. In fact, not only is there no follow-up, he mocks your strut afterwards, which to me means definitely 100%. This is an issue. Like, I mean, when do you know did you not know he was going to strut and mock you until afterwards? Or, I mean, just
I didn't know he's going to do the strut. I thought it added to it. And who knows, maybe we might've had a brief conversation and I said, hey man, you going to strut after you do it? It fits. And he might've said, hell no. And then got out there and said, okay, this is a good thing. I can strut and then give him the double bird. Who knows? I don't recall all that exactly, but it is one of those little clips that still lives on in infamy, like the Beetlejuice guitar shot. This stunner and that strut and the double bird is a heck of a gift.
And so you pick your newly crowned sorry tail up off the canvas and go to the back and
get in the rent-a-car and say, I'm going home. Let's see. So it'd been a Monday. We went home on Tuesdays, or maybe no, SmackDown wasn't yet. But no, just again, that's why the WWF in the transition period into the full-blown Attitude Era, but the creative room was different. Bruce, Pat, Cornette, it really was a really, really different time.
I'm just wondering. I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. You're okay with this creative. What's the self-talk to make you think, no, this is okay?
Oh, I have an option. I can go home and not get paid and be tied up in a contract, or I can come to work and do whatever they ask me to do the very best that I can in hopes that it'll get better. There is no, I mean, look, I got lucky or blessed to grow up in it. You better have leverage before you start bitching. If not, it's real simple to slide down that card, be left off a couple of house show runs. Not, that's what idiots do. Oh, I'm going to bitch about this and make it so painful to book, even when you're in the mid card. All right, just do the very best you can. Look, in reality, I worked with Undertaker the month before. I'm not sure what I did in November. I was doing house show loops with Dude Love or Cactus Jack, whatever it may be. The pay was very good. My guarantee, remember, this is year one of my deal. I was getting paid very good, and we'll get through it. We'll figure it out. And here's probably at the very, very, very end of the day, I've always had a ton of confidence in Vince. And
Russo or McMahon or both?
McMahon. A ton of confidence in him that, look, we did a deal, shook hands, signed a contract. Things don't always come out of the gate. You pivot, you do this, you tweak, do that. But at the end of the day, you figure it out and you get rolling and you get going. And so I kind of think that is something in this industry that is one of those unsaid deals that who you're working for really matters, because at the end of the day, if you don't have supreme confidence in the system, then you start second guess, and then things a hubcap comes off, then maybe a lug nut, and before you know it, you're derailed. But if you got confidence in the direction you're going, I mean, you see it in the NFL every day. I mean, you can look at, take two different franchises. So we'll take Tennessee, Vrabel, the coach, John Robertson, the general manager, our best player sideline, and we're still winning games. The culture's set. You look at Belichick, greatest quarterback ever. They're rolling. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and just a complete debacle, the culture. But that supreme confidence in the leader is to me where the rubber meets the road. If you've got supreme confidence in the leader, you can overcome everything.
Well, the figurative leader of the NWA was the world champ at the time, Dan Severn. At this point, had you met Dan? Had you met Dan by 97?
I don't think I'd met him. No, I again, an early UFC fan. And, Dan, not a lot of pizzazz, what a credentials, amateur ways, but I don't believe I'd actually met him until this time.
What about Reckless Youth? He was actually the North American champion. He was the guy who was holding the belt, but he had to vacate it so you guys could do this angle. I mean, I guess in Reckless Youth was really, when you go back and you think about independent wrestling, certainly you could argue it was Al Snow or Sabu, but of this era, it was Reckless Youth. He was kind of the guy.
You know one of his students were?
Who?
Derek. Shout out to Derek. Researcher Derek
Sabato. I'll be doing
that all precise.
Well, we got two Dereks on the squad, and
my bad. You're right. You're my bad. Yes, but Reckless Youth. It was, gosh, and it's like our listeners. It's so different when you say independent wrestling in 1998 than as opposed to Game Changer Wrestling in 2022. It's just it's so different. But yes, he was that guy that you.
I guess what I'm getting to is he vacated the title so you could win it. He did you solid. Is it true that you just didn't have a hair on it and you didn't think you could take Reckless Youth? Is that the deal?
That's it. It goes without saying. Look, I had to abide by my contract, and I could not wrestle anybody who wasn't under contract to Titan Sports. So
I'm telling you this, Reckless Youth could have gave you 3.5 minutes, just as good as Barry Windham did.
Oh boy.
He was 21 at the time. I mean, wow. Yeah, I mean, he could have. He's always going to be one of those guys where I think, man, why did nobody ever do anything with him?
Wow, 21.
Barry Windham. Your memories of working with Barry in this match, though. I mean, I know it was supposed to be Doug Furness. You didn't have the sack to take on Reckless Youth. It winds up being Barry.
Again, Barry was a guy that, second generation. Told you earlier about. I mean, he's a man's man. He's a big human being. I was just, red hot off of the faction that Barry was in. I was coming off my red hot 4 Horsemen run. And so a lot of respect, Conrad, I'm trying to get you to laugh there, but coming off my Horseman run. And so 2 4 Horsemen locking it up as me and Barry did, but no, a quick TV match. He was always Barry is smooth as silk, and he can go. I mean, again, a guy his size that can do what he could do. It was a great opportunity to work with him.
So let's talk about some other names that are at least discussed in the Observer. Dave would say there's talk of the Rock and Roll Express and Dirty White Boy coming in for this angle. Of course, Tony Anthony used to be TL Hopper, the wrestling plumber here, as an enhancement talent in WWF, but he had quite the run in Smoky Mountain. And I know, unfortunately, a lot of fans just think of him as TL Hopper, but Tony Anthony could tell some stories. He could work. He's an old school Southern wrestler, but it was hard for me to imagine him in the WWF here. Did you think that was going to happen?
Look, Tony was Dirty White Boy in USWA. I worked with Tony many times. And Tony's good, knew what he's doing. Him and my bud Jim Powell teamed up at one point, but the Dirty White Boys. But, I didn't look, the Rock and Roll, again, Another thing that jumped off the page at me last night that was very clear during this era of not just these guys that I'm mentioning, but, you know, the WWF, now WWE, they have a certain style of wrestling, just like New Japan, Strong Style, just like Lucha Libre and AAA. You know, everybody sort of has their different style. But Barry, obviously, born and bred on territory in NWA, rock and roll for sure, NWA. A lot of, we'll call it the WCW or the NWA style of wrestling. And I knew, because I went to the school of Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall and others, Bret Hart, that WWF style. And so I knew the mesh of styles were a certain issue, because Vince, and probably to a much greater degree, Pat Patterson, the in-ring product and in-ring style was done a certain way, and those guys didn't do it that way. And again, so I think I can adapt because of my upbringing, but I knew what worked for Vince and Pat, and those guys didn't have that style at all.
It's originally announced that at Madison Square Garden on January 10th, you're going to face Dude Love, but you don't wrestle on the show. And I believe you don't wrestle on the show because it's around this time. It's become apparent that you've got some stuff happening in your personal life. It is your personal life, so I'll let you discuss as much or little as you'd like.
You know, and you coined the phrase for the podcast, and I'm sure others, is the what ifs.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me to get to look, Cactus Jack McFoley came to Tennessee, went out to Texas with us. He went to WCW, had his run there. So I've had a relationship with Mick since 88, 89, you know, and then he comes in and works that real cool angle with the Undertaker as Mankind. And now he's, you know, he's morphing and all this. But for me to get the opportunity to wrestle Mick at the Garden, God almighty, man, what if?
Oh, it could have been gigantic for you.
For me, yes. And a lot of people, well, I'm sure you're aware, but you know, in those days, Vince didn't go to live events, very rarely, but he never missed a Garden show. And he would stand at the curtain and watch the matches live. And when you came through the curtain, if he stood there and either went to talking to somebody or whatever it was, oh, okay. But if he liked your match, he came up to you. And then if you really liked your match, you got to go to Smith and Walensky's, get a good steak. but you know, when I had matches, or that tag match a couple of different times, Vince would love the match. And so that opportunity that I didn't get to have, what a incredible what if. But I missed it that time for a good reason. And we'll just go into it briefly. That was the time that my first wife, Jill, that was her first diagnosis of breast cancer. So they immediately pulled me off the road and everything that went with that. So yeah, I that match didn't happen, but that's one of those what ifs. Jarrett Foley at the Garden, and you know, this time in WWF, the momentum was awesome. Stone Cold was just, I mean, you could just feel it every night when he came out on Raw or even at live events, the buzz that he had and the talent getting over and everything that went with it. But it was a hot time to be in the business. But no, I was pulled off the road to come home and take care. And that's exactly what I did.
So it is a fun what if, but Mike Tyson winds up being announced as appearing at the Royal Rumble. And there's rumors that he might be doing something at WrestleMania. It's hard for us to put that in the proper context now in 2022. But Mike Tyson in the 90s was the pay-per-view king. You know, whatever Floyd Mayweather was, Mike Tyson was much larger from a pop culture phenomenon. From the Nintendo game to everything else, just media the way it was, with there being less access through social media and the internet. If Mike Tyson was on TV, if Mike Tyson was doing a pay-per-view fight, the world stood still for a few minutes or maybe a few seconds. And the idea that he's involved here, the old school promoter in you has to think, well, business is about to pick up, right?
Whew. And, you know, a lot of ways, Tyson was Goldberg, but in the boxing world before Goldberg.
Yes.
It was unheard of. Again, 20 cable channels that really meant something, maybe 10, a couple of networks. You didn't have football on Thursday nights during that era. Basketball wasn't 7 nights a week. The sporting world revolved around weekends, and not every weekend, because just how things, it was just a different era. But when Tyson was fighting, that's all you heard about day in, day out. He was on the front page of USA Today every day leading up to the fight, all the news broadcasts. That's how the fight was promoted. It just a big deal. And I don't even know if Bruce remembers this, but I can remember, like, I got to find out, as a promoter mentality, how the hell are they getting Mike Tyson to step into the professional wrestling world? Because knowing Stone Cold's persona and how they're going to do I didn't know the angle, but knowing, okay, that's where they're going with this whole rub, how they're going to do it. Vince had become a character, or, becoming all that. And I'm just like, this is big. I mean, Hogan Andre was enormous, but it was a spectacle in a different era. But now all of a sudden we're 10 years later, and we're as in knee deep into, again, I'm going to say pop culture. I didn't really throw that out there. This was, to me, the biggest pop culture storyline that had ever been done. And I can remember asking Bruce, how did you guys pull this off? I mean, this is Tyson. And again, I'm going back into a little bit of upbringing, that you're getting him to go into a completely entertaining world. And he comes from the quote unquote legitimate sports background. I thought that was really cool. And Bruce, all he would, we chat a little bit, all he'd say is, Jeff, we've been working on this a long time. And that's when I went, freaking McMahon is so smart. So smart.
You're back on the road in Anaheim at the Arrowhead Pond in front of 12,780
That was funny.
And lose to Owen Hart by DQ when Jim Cornette interferes. Your old pal, Owen Hart, the Pond, 12,783 fans. Any chance you remember that one?
Oh, I mean, look, it was Austin and others as far as the touring brand, but to get to work with Owen on a live house like that, it's a night off. And again, Owen had been in the system 10 years at this time. He had come and gone, but still. So to get to go out and work with him, and those California crowds, lots of fun, very lively, energetic at that time. Pond was Anaheim. I don't say it's a brand new market by any means, but that building, it had a vibe. It wasn't LA. Pre-Staples Centers, but it was the market to go into for us in LA, and a lot of fun. The
next day you're in Las Vegas working against Dude Love at the Thomas and Mack Center. Only 3,822 fans there. Dude gets the win by count out. So you do get to work Foley, but unfortunately it's not Madison Square Garden. It is one of those what could have beens. At the Rumble, you and Owen Hart start a feud, which we discussed in our Owen Hart episode. You and Cornette would attack him in the aisleway on your way to the ring, and he returns to eliminate you shortly after you enter the Rumble. So this has to be something you're at least thinking is going to be a long-term program for a minute here with you and Owen, right?
Well, with the NWA, and I don't know, Owen, where he was at on the card, and just sort of, again, I don't want to go too far back in time, but you got to remember what happened. So how far are we removed from Montreal? 4 months?
Less than, at this point it's January. So 2 months. Yeah.
So Owen was in a
big spot.
Yeah. A unique spot. I'll say that. A unique spot.
A lot of eyeballs on him, a lot of interest in him.
Yes. And so with the NWA and Owen being second generation, my optimism, it was a little mini storyline within the Rumble, but where are we going to go with it was my mindset.
The Rumble in San Jose did 300,000 buys. By comparison, WCW that month ran Sold Out, which historically was not a great show, but this one's different. It's headlined by Ric Flair and Bret Hart. And we've also got Lex Luger and Randy Savage here. They get 380,000 buys, and that's probably the closest competition you've had on pay-per-view in quite a while. When you take a look at that, you know, and it certainly looks like the WWF is on the rise, and WCW is on the heels of their biggest pay-per-view ever, Starrcade 97. Are you ever second guessing your decision, or did it come down to, and I'm not trying to shit on anybody, but you had more confidence in Vince than you did Eric?
I had more confidence in, and this ain't just because I get to duke it out with him at the end of the month in St. Louis. It wasn't a Vince Eric comparison. It was so clear that it's a corporate run versus family owned. It was, you know, that year was what an education, because Eric, you know, and he you know, we all know this. He's not Vince. Vince is not only the creative head, he's the executive producer. He tells Kevin Dunn what to do. He tells travel what to do. He tells marketing what to do. The buck stopped with him on everything. And Eric was collaborative, but you also had Hogan, and you had talent that had, you know, they're a lot stronger say that at the end of the day, nobody ever disputed, if Vince and Stone Cold go into a room, Vince is going to get what he wants, and what he wants may be acquiescing to Stone Cold for the night, but in the end, it's Vince's show. WCW is completely different. So your question was I second guessing? Not in the least bit. I had a contract I was happy with. I was willing to work and get an upside. And I had my year and knew exactly what WCW was about. So I was, I was not second guessing it at all.
The classic Raw from Fresno is the next night. Of course, it was a classic because you wrestled Bradshaw. Kidding. Austin Tyson is the thing that really jumpstarts the WWF and starts the momentum, at least, for Austin to take over the wrestling world. In hindsight, boy, what a big night that was. But you're still there, and Bradshaw, you know, the tag team partner of Barry Windham, and we know he's going to go on to be a multi-time world champion. So interesting time. Let's take a look at the business. The month of January sees the WWF actually reach a 4 in the ratings on January 19th. I mention that because it's the first time they've done it since May of 96. And you might be wondering, what happened in May of 96? Scott Hall came down and started the NWO and the invasion angle. Nitro is still drawing at worst a 4.3 in that month. But the WWF is gaining some traction. Speaking of the match you had with Bradshaw, though, Meltzer said this: Jeff Jarrett retained the NWA North American title, beating Blackjack Bradshaw in 3 minutes and 41 seconds. Rock and Roll Express, wearing tag belts this time, although never called NWA Tag Team Champions, were at ringside and interfering freely. Blackjack Windham was at ringside as well, but seemingly asleep while all of the interference was going on. Bradshaw worked a lot stiffer and more aggressive after his Japan stint. Windham did a run in and went to hit Jarrett, but instead gave Bradshaw the lariat when Windham moved, leading to the pin. Rock and Rolls and Jarrett were beating on Bradshaw after the match when Windham teased saving him and then turned on him, and Jim Cornette announced that a former NWA champion, Barry Windham, had rejoined the NWA. Windham looked like he was asleep, which matches the way he's been wrestling. So Meltzer, a little bit of opinion in there, not necessarily a big fan of Windham, but it is the first time you've actually got some storyline. I mean, Rock and Roll Express are here and wearing some tag titles, and the Blackjacks are officially broken up, and Barry Windham's joining the NWA. So maybe it's not the best creative, but it's something, right?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, again, and I know I'm probably biased but yeah, I never, ever believe Ricky and Robert were heels.
Yeah.
Even in downtown New York City, their likable body language, their, you know, the name Rock and Roll is, even though it was maybe a little dated, it was still the Rock and Roll Express. Nothing antagonistic about them. So yes, there was some creative to it. You made the comment that Meltzer said that Bradshaw worked a little stiffer coming back from Japan. Hell, to my knowledge, Bradshaw worked stiff before during, and after Japan. I mean, I don't know where Dave gets that, but that's another story. But JBL would always lay it in, but I enjoyed it. I mean, he again, you knew you were on a match when you worked with him, and that's how it should be.
Chat me up about Ricky and Robert, just their excitement to be here. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, they have been around a long time and had a lot of success. I mean, we've recently covered 1986 with both Arn Anderson and Tony Schiavone on our podcast. And even specifically Mr. Crockett, before he passed away, said one of his biggest regrets was not doing more with the Rock and Roll Express in 1986. He didn't understand just how dominant they were, how popular they were, how over they were, I believe is the word. But this is their first time under the bright lights of the WWF. And at the time, this has to feel like a big opportunity. But the presentation doesn't exactly look like the rest of the WWF here.
Bingo. You know, when you look at, especially from a historical perspective, the Rock and Roll Express, I would never say they're the greatest talkers in the world, and their moveset maybe not out of this world, but they had a vibe. And look, Beatles hit the U.S. and they stepped off the plane. It's the aura. Yes, they had great songwriting, and they had played in Germany for weeks on end, so their act was down. The basics of the mechanics of the music business and the melodies and all that. But still, the it factor of the Beatles, or the it factor of the Fabulous Ones, or the it factor, the Young Bucks, you know, you never say Nick or Matt are like these great talkers. And yes, their moveset is very unique and very progressive, and sometimes mesmerizing, awesome. But still, it's that aura of, hey, look at them, I want to go buy their shirt. You can't really capture that in a bottle. And Ricky and Robert had that through their, you know, Lawler tying bandanas on their thighs in Memphis, and then boom, went to Watts, and then, you know, went to the Crockett's in the Carolinas and took off. But then you drop them in the middle of the Attitude Era, didn't work. It's like trying to play a rap song at a if
they dropped Hulk Hogan in AEW tomorrow, the 1985 Hulk Hogan,
exactly,
it would be, don't get me wrong, there's a certain section will be like, yay, but if there was no nostalgia to it,
nope.
A lot of this young audience, they would have never seen the Rock and Roll Express before. They would be like, what is this?
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just sort of out of context.
Way out of context.
But
no attitude. No attitude.
Then the bell rings, and we know they're going to have a great match. There's no doubt about that. Like, what works in a wrestling match, that doesn't really go out of style. Jim Cornette, the Rock and Roll Express, Jeff Jarrett, Barry Windham. That's what the NWA is looking like. Later that night, you're going to tape Shotgun Saturday night, and the Legion of Doom are going to defeat the Rock and Roll Express with you and Windham at ringside. Process what we just said.
Yes. Let that sink in.
This is not Monday Night Raw. This isn't Nitro. This is a taped middle of the weekend, late night bullshit Shotgun Saturday night. And we've got Legion of Doom, AKA the Road Warriors, who used to be the biggest draw of them all. I mean, they even have a term to this day, a Road Warrior Pop. And one of the best tag teams, and clearly the hottest in 1986, Rock and Roll Express. And they're on a tape show. It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Reliving this, Conrad, I'm going to go back to the early statement that you have to know the late 80s and how big of a deal it was. And I guess how many tickets they had previously sold, but what an education that neither team worked the WWF style at all. And so, yeah, it was a shotgun match. Nobody there that night went, oh, this shouldn't be on Shotgun. This should be main eventing. Nope. It was for another time and another place. But it's fun to go back and relive this. And discuss it and chat it up, but it wasn't the late 80s. It was the late 90s in the Attitude Era. And this was what it was.
In Davis, California, the next night, it's a Raw taping. Meltzer would write, Jarrett and Wyndham beat LOD in a weird match. The match was boring with Morton, Gibson, and Cornette in the corner. Animal was hit by Wyndham with the tennis racket while Morton and Gibson were fighting with Hawk, and then they pinned him. The bell rang and they were announced as the winners, although apparently it was a screw up as everyone acted weird and just kept wrestling looking mad. So this is clearly some miscommunication here, but it is a taped show. And no matter what happens, it's kind of cool to get your hand raised at a tag team affair over the Legion of Doom. It's not like they've spent a lot of time on their backs, but still, what do you remember about this match and why it was different?
Again, different era. Nowadays you have a segment producer, a match producer, an agent, if you will. We had them then, but it wasn't near as hands-on. You know, the Jack Lanza, God rest his soul, recently passed away. You know, Chief Jay Stromgo, Rene Goulet, Tony Gurria. Apologies, my voice is going. But just a different era. But I remember this for sure, Conrad. I don't know why, but my God, it was a stinker. I mean, it was scrambled eggs, went nowhere, very flat. It was what it was. I think nobody, they didn't want to beat anybody. I don't know the politics behind it, but it was not good.
So the match gets edited to hell. It cuts off at the pinfall. We don't ever see the DQ. So thank goodness it was taped. But on some level, this has to be, or I shouldn't say it has to be. Let me ask, is being on the road a distraction from what's going on at home? Or do you find yourself here saying, I need to be here, but I really need to be home? And then when you're at home, I need to be here, but I really need to be on the road.
You know, I would have to get that once to once the diagnosis came, tumor removed, double mastectomy happened, went through the chemo, wherever this, you know, and it happened really, really quick. Once I guess that was just getting on the mend and getting well, Jill was very much adamant, go back on the road. All you can do is sit here and look, I got plenty of help around me. One child at the time, very adamant about going back on the road. And so she pushed me out of the house, or asked me to get out of the house before all this. I don't know the exact timeline. So we're probably in February, Conrad, March.
Yeah, February.
Yeah. So yeah. So it all happened really quick. But no. So you said was it a distraction? Neither way, it was go back to work.
So let's talk about what you're doing next. You're going to be working Chains, who is Brian Lee of the Disciples of Apocalypse. It's going to be on the Shotgun Show. He wins by DQ, and it's after a big interference schmoz. We don't talk a lot about the fake Undertaker, which is what most of our listeners probably remember him as. I remember him as primetime Brian Lee in both Smoky Mountain and ECW. And again, we see him here as Chains. You spend any time with Brian Lee? He's a Southern boy, right?
He started in Tennessee, or I don't say started, but he was childhood friends. I met him originally through Ron and Don Harris. And so, yeah, I mean, it was and that's where Mark Undertaker, they met, to my knowledge, in Tennessee. And so that's where that whole the fake Undertaker came out of it in 96. So, know Brian, know him well through the years. And we were all, I'll say, sort of came up together. I'm not exactly sure what year he came, but good athlete. And, I know that he made some noise in Smoky Mountain, as you refer to, but yeah, know Brian well.
So then we're in Philly at the Core State Center in front of 12,088 folks. You're going to defeat Skull, which is Don Harris, who we've talked about, one of your old pals. You beat
a live event, right? This is the live event.
Yes. And you beat him again in Hartford in front of 6,000 folks. We haven't gotten to Austin Michaels yet, but you can feel the momentum. You can feel the houses starting to build. You defeat Cactus Jack, second from the top in Huntington, 6,120 fans. Then zip over to Columbus, Ohio, another 6,480 fans. Long way from the days you and Mick used to spend in a sparse sportatorium, is it not?
A cold, sparse sportatorium. That's a tongue twister. No, but that's again, this was a fascinating look for me on WWF. Wasn't quite winning in the ratings, but look at the live events. 12,000 in Philly, 6,000 in Huntington, West Virginia, 6 in Columbus, 7 or 8, just the houses were good. The product was, I'll call it hot. It wasn't red hot. It was going to get a little bit hotter, but it was definitely on the way, and they weren't winning in ratings. So again, going back to, the barometers of this business, merch sales, ticket sales, you could just see, all right, business is not picking up. It has picked up.
So you get to a match with Ken Shamrock on a loop in Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Louisville. Shamrock is relatively new to the professional wrestling business at this point. What was it like working with a relatively green Ken Shamrock?
I loved it. I mean, me and Kenny we hit it off as buddies, and obviously that came to light years later when NWA TNA. But Ken, again, his UFC background, and he had worked over in the Carolinas, and that can't remember what that small promotion was, Upstart. But Kenny, at this point, I can't say that he loved this business, but he wanted to understand it. He wanted to make money. He had a family. Kenny came up the hard way, not talking about the wrestling industry, in life. And so Ken had made a name himself for a UFC, and now he's going to get to make a name for himself in the WWF and make some money. And I enjoyed working with him. That was, to me, that played to my strength, is to have matches with guys and try to bring the very best out of them and accentuate the positive and negate the negative.
Let's talk about something kind of fun. There's a Raw from Indianapolis, which has you and Wyndham losing to Bradshaw and Flash Funk.
Oh,
process this team now: Justin Hawk Bradshaw and Flash Funk. From the Observer, or I guess it's Blackjack Bradshaw, whatever. You get the idea. Funk was attacked by the Rock and Roll Express and carried out, leaving Bradshaw, who is getting the mega push right now to create a 90s version of Stan Hansen, by himself. Bradshaw still ended up hitting the lariat on Jarrett for the pin in 7 minutes and 3 seconds to set up the NWA title match on pay-per-view. The entire NWA destroyed Bradshaw after the match, with Jarrett holding a figure 4 on him, while a newly blonde Barry Windham kept jumping on his bad knees that ended his football career. So you finally get a real opponent, a real angle. This is kind of cool. I want to ask about the lariat, though. I've heard over the years that a Bradshaw lariat goes one of two ways. He takes your head off or you don't feel a thing. Which version did you get?
Both. No, Bradshaw. Like I said, you knew when you got out of a match with JBL that you were in a match. And I say that out of all due respect, and really, in a way, it's how it should be. The old saying, "Oh, brother, I didn't feel a thing." I'm like, are you really doing, I don't say the business, but I don't think you're really doing things justice. I'm not saying you go out there and kill each other, but JBL, Texan, a man's man. But look, the goal is to go out and, I hate to even call it put on a performance, put on a match that is a very physical, aggressive style match that I believe equates into selling tickets. It's a business. So no, he would take your head off. I'll say that sometimes if he didn't like you, he took it off a little harder. But no, we always work good together.
In Evansville the next night, you're in a Raw taping, 8,457 fans there to see you and Wyndham team up to beat the LOD by DQ because Bradshaw attacks you. And then at No Way Out in Houston, you and Bradshaw meet up for the NWA North American title. Here's what Meltzer had to say. Bradshaw beat Jarrett by DQ in 8:59, so Jarrett retains. Jim Ross said the match was historic because it was the first time an NWA title had ever been defended on a WWF pay-per-view event. Lawler even talked about Paul Bosch promoting NWA matches in this city for so many years. While that bit of trivia is correct, it's hard to call the match historic since it was forgotten about even while it was going on. Rock and Roll Express and Barry Windham came out with Cornette and Jarrett, but everyone but Cornette was ordered to the back. They're trying to make Bradshaw and Stan Hansen right down to the ring entrance with the bull rope and the ultra stiff offense, but the crowd was dead. Most of the match consisted of Cornette and Jarrett working on Bradshaw's bad knee. Finally, Bradshaw makes the comeback by catching Jarrett's crossbody and turning it into a fallaway slam. After a power bomb, Bradshaw then slingshots Cornette into the ring, and Cornette drops his racket. He whips the two into each other, allowing Cornette to take his 1980s manager bump. Jarrett then clocked Bradshaw with the racket for the DQ. After the match, Bradshaw made his own comeback, cleaning up on both Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. They also took bumps for him. Finally, Barry Windham came out, and they were cleaning house until the LOD made the save. Half a star. So lots of gaga, but it is an interesting little trivia note about an NWA title being defended on a WWF pay-per-view. As a wrestling nerd like yourself, is that kind of cool? Or since you lived it, is it like, ugh, rather forget that one?
Well, it's funny how the NWA, maybe you wouldn't think this, but how it was historic, and JR was on point with all that. And now really that night, who would have thought 5 years later that I would be a part of the NWA champion, just that correlation, but there was none. It was a storyline that wasn't over. The people were not into it. They came to, I call it the Summit. They came to the show in Houston that night. I don't think anybody said, hey, let's go watch that Jarrett JBL match for the title. That wasn't quite in the cards there, Connie. It was whatever was on top. They came to see Undertaker and whoever he was facing, and they came to see Stone Cold. And I don't know who else was on this card and all that, but it was, look, you just sort of named, it was look at all the folks in this, and JBL was playing the role of a Stan Hansen. So JBL, Wyndham, Jarrett, Rock and Roll, Cornette, LOD, LOD are really the Road Warriors. They got over as the Road Warriors, and the whole world knew, oh, Vince is going to have to make them with a new name, the LOD. They're still the Road Warriors. That whole storyline was fish out of water. That didn't fit the WWF mode, and it damn sure didn't fit the Attitude Era mode.
No Way Out, by the way, is the February pay-per-view between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. This is a lame duck show. It only does 150,000 buys. So more like half of what the Rumble is. But again, everybody is in tune as wrestling fans. We've been conditioned at this point. The February pay-per-view doesn't matter. And here's a spoiler. It still doesn't. We care about the Rumble, and then we really want to get to WrestleMania. Anything in between is just conversation. They were voting that way in 1998 with their hard-earned pay-per-view dollars, because instead they bought the WCW show, Super Brawl. It didn't do 150,000 buys like No Way Out. It did 415,000 buys. It's a rematch, though, for Sting and Hogan. So it's a major event for WCW, a little L for the WWF, but WrestleMania is right around the corner. And the next night on Raw from Dallas, you work with Owen in a European title match that Owen wins by DQ. Of course, Cornette interfered. But I think this is your one and only time to work Owen on TV. Do I have that right? I think I was just sitting there, not to rewind too much. 550,000 buys, 400 Super Brawl, 150 WWE, WWF, February, 550,000 buys. And the ratings, it's just fascinating for the researchers, and thanks, Derek, and the team. Yeah, just to look at it in that context. Well, here's the best part: 565,000, and that's just domestic. We don't know, what was happening in Japan at this point. I don't think ECW had a February 98 pay-per-view. I think they had a March. Either way, though, the point is you got a lot of places to spend money in wrestling, and a lot of folks are.
And I've recently started using the Apple Wallet generation that you can literally click on your phone. Fight is a lot of impulse buys. That pick a fight, that's going to be something that people are going to see something hopefully on our post and go, oh, wow, let me click on this. And you can watch it right for your phone. Because look, not all these events are 60, 70 bucks. Some of them are 14 or 12 or 19. It's boom, go watch this. Anyhow, back to Owen. I think that's the first one and only TV match as far as, or the first, because we got into it later with the Blue Blazer and us as a tag team, but us one-on-one, him a true babyface and me a heel. I believe so.
So Jeff, you're 45 days into the gimmick. What are you thinking at this point? Do you thinking there's more meat on the bone, or this thing's winding down?
It's winding down. I mean, again, coming back through the curtain, I referenced that about Vince at the Garden, or coming through the go position or gorilla position, WWE after matches. You get the vibe. You get the reaction. You know where things are going. And there was, and I don't know exactly when, but I remember sitting at a TV and Pat Patterson walked up and said something to the effect of, I think he was the first, what about the Double J character? And I'm like, what about it? Well, we sort of had a conversation. What's your feedback? Look, and he's just like, Jeff, this is not official. I just want to pick your brain. And I'm like, well, we know it worked before. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to do it a little different? And then I don't think he said it, but I know the Tennessee lead, but I knew to stay on point, to stay on topic, this NWA thing was going nowhere fast. There probably was a stunner or two more inside of this that, it was as we know, filler, fodder. It wasn't going anywhere. And I think we all knew it. I'm positive we all knew it once it got going.
The next day in Waco, it's a Raw taping. Shamrock gets the submission win, but it's a non-title match. And after the match, you say it's time to go your separate ways from Jim Cornette. Why the sudden shift here? Is this Jim's idea? Russo's? Was it just not working? I mean, just like that, the North American title disappears. It's all gone. I mean, what the hell happened, and why so quickly? Did you show up to the building and they break the news? Or
my take was, in creative that week, Vince said, it's over, guys, end it. And literally that was the end of the conversation in regards to NWA. Okay, we're going to have Jarrett and Shamrock. Jeff will put Shamrock over. They'll do the clean break. We're going to put a button on it, and it's dead. That was my take. I didn't ever think that it was a Russo or a Cornette or a Bruce or a Pat. It's Vince wants it over with. It's over. Game, set, match, boys.
And literally the next week, here comes Tennessee Lee. The former Colonel Robert Parker, jump rope and all, coming out to introduce you as Double J, the world's greatest country singer, the world's greatest wrestler. When do you find out? Okay, we're killing the NWA tonight, and we're bringing Colonel Parker in next week.
It was all, I don't have the completely photographic memory, but it was, we're ending this, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because me and Robert, God, we worked hundreds of times in Tennessee. And again, our families go back to the 60s together. So been around him in a lot of ways. He was one of my early mentors. He taught me a lot about promo skills and cadence and timing. And, there was no scripts in those days on Memphis, Tennessee, but Robert would like, hey, Jeff. I mean, Robert his promo skills and his thought and story, he's good, really good. And so him coming in and coming off that Colonel, it all sort of fit. He could do this. He is a third generation promoter. So it fit with, before we did Double J, I had a roadie. Now we're bringing Colonel Parker, a la Elvis. I sort of saw all where it was going. Knew from the beginning it wasn't Attitude Era, but it was a different slant. And how can we integrate into, are we the opposite of Attitude, which can get us some heat, and Vince will shine a light on that. But I know from the beginning, I was super excited because Robert can talk. It was a different twist on Double J and where we're going to go with it. And I guess at the very top of it is I'm out of the NWA storyline.
And you were glad about that at this point?
Hell yes.
So Robert and Ricky Morton, unfortunately, are going to continue as the NWA Tag Team Champions, even dropping the belts to the Headbangers before the new Midnight Express angle of Bob Holly and Bart Gunn begins. And of course, that all wraps up in April in Unforgiven. Were you disappointed to see Ricky and Robert have their cup of coffee in the big time and have to move on? Because this had to be like a new lease on life for them in this era.
For sure. It was, they were going to get another, I don't call it a run, but get more work, get consistent work. Cause Ricky had done a lot in WCW in the early 90s as a single. They had their heyday of the late 80s was long gone, and they had some stagger starts, or they'd got occasional work. I don't say full time in WCW. So here they go. But man, in hindsight, when you look at it, this was really the last of the, I guess you could say 80s wrestling. This was sort of the last stand with Cornette and rock and roll. And it didn't ever come back from this, to my knowledge.
Here's what's crazy too. I've given you a lot of shit because we're buddies, not because I really feel that way, but I've been like, hey man, you killed the NWO, killed the Bullet Club. I didn't know you damn killed the NWA too. That just slipped my mind. You killed the NWA, Jeff. Don't you feel a little bit of guilt?
I brought it back in 2002. I resurrected it.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right. Well, I wonder
the power that I have.
Is that the game plan with GCW? You're here to close that puppy down, and then you'll breathe new life into it, and it'll be called not Game Changer Wrestling, but Global Championship. I don't know, but there's got to be something, right?
You are such a ball buster. I refer to you as silly shenanigans, Conrad.
I'm good with that.
I tell you what, bud, I think you will be surprised at some future plans. I'll just say that.
Barry Windham is going to continue on with Cornette until May, and then he's gone. You're really the only one who survives the NWA gimmick, if you will, this whole storyline or angle. Eventually, Dan Severn comes into the fold, but really, the NWA disappears completely by mid-June. It was just, I don't know. I can't say it's a bad idea. I really can't. I just don't think it was done very well. And it almost feels like it was done that way out of spite. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, now that we've beaten it up and dissected and cussed and discussed, what say you?
I don't think Vince would ever say, I'm going to create bad content on purpose, but it was never a priority for Vince. That's very obvious. And it was, like you said, this is cleared up a little bit more for me, that it was hunt or be hunted, kill or be killed. And so somebody's win and somebody's got to lose. And so this was a segment or two that of the 11 segments that had a little different thing, but it was clearly seen throughout that, okay, maybe it was used to get JBL over at some point. Maybe they had that. We're bringing JBL back from Japan, and we're going to use this storyline to get him over. We're going to obviously use Austin when he needs some chum to stun. But yeah, I'm still going to say, I don't think Vince says, hey, we're going to show Cornette this sucks. We're going to go do this. It is, all right, let's do it. And he's not going to prioritize it over something that has a Dude Love, a Mick Foley, Austin, a DX, or whatever it was. He was never going to get priority over that. It was what it was.
Let's do some fan questions.
Oh boy.
Every show's top guy, Nick Myers, wants to know who created your gear and came up with your look during this time.
All creative services. It was a different look they wanted. I don't know if it was Vince or someone in there, but when they came up with the singlet, I was like, I've never really worn a singlet. So it's a different look. But then when they started getting into the we'll call it sort of a, it was later sort of referred to as the Indian Aztec, but sort of the wings and all that kind of stuff. That's all WWF at the time, creative services.
Yeah, I think we call it Aztec Warrior is the look I've seen, or is the way I've seen it described. Ad-free show's top guy Sean wants to know what happened to the North American belt. That's a good question, Jeff. Do you know who owned or had possession of that belt?
Hell, you're the belt expert. Do you have any idea? I don't. I have no idea. That's one of those belts that never went home with me. I can say that. It stayed with whoever, but it didn't come home with me.
Too valuable. Ad-free show's top guy Brad wants to know, what do you think of the current NWA product? Do you agree with their subscription model?
Two-part question. I love anything that creates, and I don't want to say this in derogatory, but a niche. They have the studio setting. They have obviously the lineage, which I'm high on. They have a style. You know, you can look at Trevor and Nick Aldis and Latimer. You know, I don't want to say bigger guys, but it's not a cruiserweight. It's not an X division. It's not that style of wrestling. It's old school storytelling. So I'm a fan of any promotion that says, I'm going to go create this niche and service this part of the wrestling audience. It's not for everybody, but it is for, and I'll say slow hanging fruit, NWA fans, but it's a style of wrestling that if you like that style, it's all about it. Now the subscription service, that is something that can forever be debated. I think that you have to draw the fine line that, Conrad, you know this from marketing, you have to give your product away in order to make money. So what's the balance?
Yeah.
What's behind the paywall? What's in front of it? What's, you know, that whole business model. So I'm not intricately involved with Billy Corgan and Nick and know the ins and outs of their numbers, but the streaming service business model is certainly something that it's what WWE's doing on a much grander scale. It is what it is. That's Game Changer Wrestling. They're right at the very top, and that's what they do. They put their product, you know, whether it's LA, Chicago, Detroit, Atlantic City, New York, they put it on Fight for a very economical buy. So it's the way business is done these days, Conrad.
Ad-free show's top guy Adam wants to know, having worked with them back to back, what are the biggest differences you found between working with Jim Cornette and Robert Fuller as a manager?
Gosh, pretty simplistic in that I don't want to say Jim's more animated, because Robert in his promos was animated, but Robert at ringside and Jim at ringside are two different talents. It's the obvious that you can just see. They both got minds for the business. They both believe in heat. There are some folks that don't understand that. I'll say this. They're so old school. They were never going to take away. If I was doing a high spot in the ring, I didn't have to worry about them carrying on. They're got a lot more wisdom with me as far as being outside. So both very knowledgeable of how to accentuate the match, and they never took away from it.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. Ad-free show Slapnut Chris wants to know, what role, if any, did Cornette's near weekly commentary on the state of wrestling play in the creation of the NWA invasion angle? I always thought the timing was convenient as the NWA started coming in within a couple months. That's a great question.
So what was his commentary?
So, you know, they would go to Cornette and he would be against a fabric backdrop, like for a photo shoot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That. I think it was all of the Method of the Madness.
Yeah. That was the sort of the precursor for how the NWA came in. Interesting observation or question here from Ad-free show Slapnut Sean. How much do you think the NWA branding hurt the stable? In other words, do you think a similar stable could have worked with a different, maybe more territory specific brand? I don't know about territory specific, Jeff, but that collection of guys, if you didn't call them the NWA, could it have worked? Because this is something that not a lot of people talk about. And I know you and I, as wrestling nerds, we know the difference. But to a casual WWF fan who just started watching wrestling, and we'll call it 96, and now here we are in 98, so they're 2 years into their fandom, and we see on the other channel the NWO, and now we flip over here and we see the NWA. By comparison, this is a pretty lame presentation.
Oh, and I'll here's where I'm going with that whole line of thinking. Southern Justice with Double J, Mark Canterbury, Texas, those big, rough-looking guys had no NWA stench, and I say that out of due respect. It had a vibe of Attitude Era. Oh, I mean, it fit much more in the Attitude Era than the NWA stable. But I say all that, it was stereotyped of a Southern brand and lesser than. So 2 strikes coming out of the gate.
So one last question. This one comes from ad-free shows. Scott Hyatt. He wants to know, is it true PCO took a big country shit in your locker room this past weekend at GCW? That's real inside baseball, maybe too inside, but Scott wants to know, did PCO drop the kids off at the pool in old Double J's dressing room?
So Conrad, did you watch? Yeah, you watched the other night, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was middle of the card.
As always.
Okay. I that was a softball for you. That's a softball for you.
Oh, Jeff, I love you so much. When I saw that, my eyes got big as saucers. Like, did he really say that?
Yes. So technically speaking, my night's work was over with. So I exited the premises.
Sure.
But out of complete respect for Mr. Ouellette, and I've got to tip my cap to him, he diplomatically asked, hey, pal, we've known each other, Jesus, since the mid-90s.
26, 27, 28 years.
Yeah. I mean, and
would it be possible if I shit in your bathroom?
He said, do you mind if I drop a deuce? All kidding aside, he actually was very polite, and he said, do you want to know the conversation, Conrad?
Yeah.
Let's
get granular about the doo-doo.
So you know the photo shoot I alluded to earlier, right?
Yeah.
Came in off that, and I'm going to hit the road, get on back over to Philadelphia, and gather my bags up. And me and Carl have seen each other a couple of times out. And in the dressing room, he's now called by, hey, PCO, or hey, Carl, right? I call him Pierre. So we're in an autograph signing or somewhere a couple of months ago. And I said, Pierre, no answer. Pierre. And I'm walking toward him. And then I finally said, hey, you dropped a couple of spicy words for him. Pierre. And I literally, Conrad, got 3 feet from him. I'm like, hey, man, what's up? He turned around and he goes, oh, you're calling me P. I mean, it dawned on him. I was actually, he didn't even go by that name anymore. Right. So anyway, he came up to me and actually introduced him. He says, hey, Pierre's got a question for you. Would you mind? And he said, would you mind if I use your bathroom? And I looked at him sincerely and I said, and I'm assuming you're going to drop one. He looked at me and grinned. He goes, yeah. And I said, go right ahead. I'm done. I'm out of there anyway. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you proverbial stirring the pot.
Yeah, right. We're going to keep the pot stirred though, because we're going to ericandjefflive.com. It's a big 2022.
Jeff and Eric Live.
Yeah. Jeff and Eric Live too, I guess. Hell, what the hell? New year, new me, new website, jeffandericklive.com. We're going to be letting you guys ask any question you want, which is maybe the most dangerous thing. We're not recording this. This is for the live house only, but you have your opportunity to do a meet and greet with Jeff and Eric before the show starts. You get a special piece of swag that you can't buy anywhere else. Plus you'll be able to get preferred seating. Of course, your pictures with both guys, an autographed 8x10, and they'll sign, items of your choosing. So doors open at 2. For VIP, general admission, doors will open at 2:45. Showtime is at 3. We'll be done by 5. There will be concessions, including alcohol. By the way, we're only 2.4 miles away from where they're holding the Royal Rumble. And that pre-show starts an hour and a half after we're finished. So you've got time to do both. So make plans to join us and come see the guys. Ask them anything you want. We're going to talk about all the goings on in WCW in the mid-90s. Of course, we're going to talk about what happened in their most recent WWE stints. And then we're going to get tons of dirt, I'm sure, about what's really going on and what really happened in TNA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think the idea that you both have to answer live questions and you're going to have to tell the truth about Dixie, and you're going to have to tell the truth about you starting your new promotion this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Pick up your tickets now, jeffandericklive.com. And that's happening on the 29th of the month, man. The same day as Royal Rumble. How about that? St. Louis.
I'm fired up, and Eric just made a little cameo on WWE. There's a lot of, I did my little Game Changer premiere and everything you just mentioned in a live crowd setting. I think there's nothing like, we all, Conrad, how many times have we told people, or I've told people, look, I know you've watched the product on TV for years and years, even if you're wink, wink, flipping through the channels, go see it live. And I've told this people, I don't know how many times, if you go to a live show and you don't like it, send me your receipt and I'll give you your money back. Seeing something live and it's our crowd, it's fans, it's guys like me and you that grew up around it and love it. So Jeff and Eric live with a live audience, with the energy that comes with it and the questions and the, oh my God, did he just say that? So then the competitive nature is Eric's going to drop a few bombs. So Double J's going to have to drop a few bombs. So it's going to be fun, Conrad. And you're going to be in there refereeing. And
it's going to be a blast. We're going to have a lot of fun. Stupid ass Silva is going to be there. So we should have a big time. I want to mention next week is going to be a fun show. We're going to be talking about TNA Genesis 2011.
Wow.
This is going to be the classic Double J MMA exhibition. Double J MMA exhibition. Man, when you were an MMA enthusiast, what a great time that was. We're going to be talking about that. And then, of course, we're going to keep the hits coming from there. By the way, you get all these shows early and ad-free, including bonus content every single month with interactive opportunities, meaning you're on a Zoom, so is Jeff. Y'all can converse, ask questions, have a discussion. It's a lot more than just a regular meet and greet, and it's exclusive to adfreeshows.com. And we've got one heck of a YouTube channel too, don't we, Jeff?
Oh, we sure do. We got a lot going on. I was just sitting there thinking what you said. Are you a fan of the mailbag with Kyoto?
Oh, I think it's unbelievably good.
The little things like that, I still say best value in the business by far, ad free. If you're a fan, we service every type of fan there is. Nostalgia fans, modern fans, everything in between. You talk about the story behind the story behind the story. Anyway, I don't know why I came up with Kyoto, but it's the truth. There's so many good little nuggets that go, that we have going on at ad free. I'll just say that. You said it. The Zoom calls. Great opportunity.
Check it out, adfreeshows.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button over on our YouTube. It's myworldonyoutube.com. That's myworldonyoutube.com. And until next week, he is you want to give your social handles? We don't ever give your social handles.
Yeah, it's at Real Jeff Jarrett on everything. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And Jeff Jarrett, realjeffjarrett.com is the website. Make it easy for everybody.
And hypothetically, maybe you want to pick up an opportunity to take a look at Pick a Fight here in a couple of weeks, because you never know who might show up. Will it be Game Changer Jeff? And maybe we'll have to ask what's causing all this. Maybe he's upset with me for outing him as not a real horseman. I don't know. We'll find out next week right here on My World. Thanks, Jeff.
Conrad, slappy New Year.
That doesn't get old.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much.
Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.